The climate will also continue to change in such a way that icy cold weather will fall over the regions of the Earth because a new cooling time inevitably approaches, whereby the overall view of the Earth will change once again. In the north, completely domesticated birds already begin annually to draw to the warmer south for the winter, and already in 100 years, these feathered animals will no longer have a home in the north. Today, many animals still living in the northern areas migrate, on the other hand, to the south, or they already begin to change themselves in their entire anatomy, etc., in order to adapt themselves to the new and approaching cold climate. Many kinds will begin to change themselves into other forms, which can be determined soon by the earthly scientists, whereby they can then exist in the new climate. Thus, the picture of the animal world will, at other times, change itself, and new forms of faunal life will revive the soil, while the earth human being must also take upon himself many changes and cannot avoid the renewed change. The signs of the times will increase continuously, whereby these signs are always, unfortunately, of a negative form. There are signs, which have been called for since ages ago in the prophecies, but the earth human being did not pay any attention to these. He would have been very much able to prevent these dreadful events from happening if the prophecies would have been attentively followed and if he would have taken good heed of them. He always ignored them, however, and he disturbed the entire planet itself, as well as all of its life forms. But now he will receive his wages for this, which will be very bitter. The time has now come, in which all things increase negatively and the prophecies literally begin to fulfill themselves. The culprits, in particular, have been called to account and have been eliminated, but only until they arrange greater havoc. They are also those who won't be spared from their destruction, who have slandered extraterrestrials and, through their lies that they have created about us, live in material glory. All those who have accumulated greedy profits from our existence and created false cult religious sects, associations, and organizations built on lies, saying that they would stand in contact with us or other extraterrestrial life forms and that we would advocate the cult religions, will have an evil end and die by their own believers or at least be ostracized by them. In particular, those frauds are called to account by their believers, who steal your material and try to evaluate this in their favor. There have already been many who have done this, and there will still be many more in the future, but it will be the case that their shameful actions will bring them harm sooner or later. And now, further chronological predictions concerning the coming months and years are as follows. Around the time of January 19, 1981, Japan will be shaken by an earthquake, which we have calculated at about a strength of 8 on the Richter scale known to you. This quake, which will occur without causing major catastrophes, despite its strength, will be deemed as a sign of the completion of the Iranian-American hostage affair. On the same day at 9:30 p.m., the American hostages are to be released, but this will be prevented by the power of the Ayatollah Khomeini because he will want to meet with the departing American President Jimmy Carter and, therefore, will not grant him the victory. For this reason, at the last moment, he will prevent the release of the prisoners so that this release won't occur until the next day, January 20, 1981, at around 6:23 p.m. For the time being, this will end the largest criminal extortion on the face of the earth, which will, however, have very serious consequences for the Iranian people and their government at a later time. The first time, the Iranians will be of the wrong opinion that they have achieved a victory by the criminal extortion and subsequent release of the prisoners, but they will soon recognize all sorts of the inconvenience and ruin that they bargained for. But their remorse and insight into their crazy direction and into their fanaticism will come too late. In particular, the new U.S. President, Ronald Reagan, will emphasize his power in order to retaliate against Iran. And that this will be so, like also many other very senseless and terrible things that lead to murder and war, is ensured by a man who works closely with President Reagan, namely a war and intrigue fanatic, like Reagan himself, a man named Haig, who has already caused much political mischief. In particular, Reagan will become unforgiving towards Iran when he is informed more precisely about the fact that the US hostages in Tehran had to suffer under torture and still have more to suffer. The next events in chronological sequence are that Indonesia will be shaken by an earthquake, which will kill several hundred people, while on the same day, namely on January 24, 1981, China will also be afflicted by another major earthquake in the territory of the province of Sichuan. There will be many deaths to lament over, which will be calculated in the thousands. As usual, however, the Chinese authorities will indicate a much smaller number of victims than what corresponds to the truth. In addition to such serious and tragic events, other things will happen in the world, such as in the field of crime. To make any predictions about this in a graduated form would be pointless because the entire level of crime in all countries is heavily rising. Thus, it is only worthwhile to say something about such issues in chronological order, and only then if it is of interest for the whole or a large part of the world's population. With our calculations, we have not only discovered serious criminal matters but also innumerable insignificant issues that would only interest a few human beings. Under these insignificant criminal incidents, events will also enter again and again, which I personally find to be amusing, in spite of the criminal background. Thus, I have noted 2 events that will happen at about the time of the earthquake in China and which I don't want to withhold from you because I just find them to be amusing and because the events will be so illogical that I cannot gain any sense from them. In St. Gallen, after a lengthy tour of Switzerland, an American singer and songwriter, Percy Sledge, will be betrayed by his manager, who will steal not only the singer's wages and escape therewith but also his bus and all of his musical instruments. The theft of money makes some sense, but I think it is amusing that the vehicle and the musical instruments will also be stolen, which the manager can't begin to do anything with. Just as incomprehensible and amusing, I think, is that in the zoological park of Copenhagen, a young elephant will be stolen also at around the same time. Despite the criminal aspects, I somehow find such incidents to be amusing because they only result from such illogicalness. But enough with that because I still have to explain many other upcoming and important events to you. Thus, it is to be said that after the earthquakes that were mentioned to occur in Indonesia and China, in South Africa, severe floods will afflict the country, while in Iceland, it will follow that a volcano will erupt, discharging immense masses of glowing lava. This volcano, however, is located far away from inhabited areas, which is why no human lives will be taken and no damage will have to be deplored. Then follows the first major political impact of the US President Reagan, who will flip the world on its head with terroristic measures. The first of his great acts will already become known at the end of the month of January 1981 and at the beginning of the month of February 1981, which is that he will reach out to murderous dictatorships and regimes of small countries and clear the way for them for the enslavement, oppression, and murder of their populations. The military aid, which he will award to these countries, will produce very weighty and negative consequences. Even with Russia, the new president will be speaking quarreling and angry words, which will bring the Russian government up in arms. But this senselessness of the American president will not yet be enough because such actions only mean the beginning of his evil reign, during which he will destroy much hope for peace which had been laboriously developed a great deal since the end of the Second World War. Thus, as the next blow of terror to Earth humanity, Reagan will bring the neutron bomb that was secured by the preceding President Carter into play, as he will want to let this weapon of terror be stationed in Europe. This will have the consequence that Russia will advance its secret upgrades even more and will then bring an even more terrible weapon into play. Reagan will provoke a lot of evil not only for the whole world but also for the people of the American states. One of these evils is that he will undermine the security of the consumers of national goods. A large consumer safety group will be attacked by Reagan, whereby the security of the consumers in America will soon begin to suffer, which will have as a consequence that the death rates caused by accidents will rise again because by Reagan's machinations, the security